Our fulfillment level is to the degree that we embrace the hero, the villain. The pursuit of one-sidedness is futile because you're not going to get rid of half of yourself. If I came to you and I said, you're always positive, never negative. No. Always nice, never mean. No. Always peaceful, never wrathful. No. You're a human being. We are both. And when we embrace both and honor both, we can love ourselves.
For someone out there that hates someone, how do you start to have the conversation with people?
Beware of judging others for what you judge in others, you do the same thing. Romans 2:1. We're too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others inside us. But the second we embrace and reflect and look within and discover it, we thank them for revealing to us the parts we've been disowning. And we embrace the hero and the villain.
How do you talk to people about trying to find that abundance?
Are you really prepared for wealth? Most people are not, and therefore their fantasies will block them from ever achieving it. All the markets are nothing but emotions of the animal nature inside the human being. Do you have the courage to think that rational goal and hold on, which is the true intrinsic value of the market?
You're one of the top people when it comes to showing people how a change in mindset can change their entire reality.
When you can handle life as it actually is and stop living in a fantasy about what you think it should be, you can liberate yourself from the bondage of the distress that you create for yourself, searching for that which is unobtainable and trying to avoid that which is unavoidable. You have to decide whether you want to be a master of your destiny or a victim of your history.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. John DeMartini, the human behavior expert, global educator, and best-selling author of over 40 books translated into 30 languages. You are the founder of the DeMartini Institute, where you teach thousands of people each year about human values, wealth creation, and self-mastery. Your frameworks, such as the DeMartini Method and Values Factor, are used globally to help individuals break through limitations, align with their highest purpose, and achieve extraordinary results in life and business. You've been featured in documentaries like The Secret and spoken on stages in more than 100 countries, bridging psychology, philosophy, and finance. Your teachings integrate science and spirituality, inspiring people to understand that whatever they think is missing in their lives can be awakened from within. John, welcome back to London Real.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction.
It's really special having you here. I think it's the third time that we're here in person together over the past, coming up on 6 years. And it's really special because for me, you're not just another guest. You're a guy that has changed my life, and your methods continue to change my life. And I was telling you, I spent the entire month of August in Barcelona, And it should have been renamed DeMartiniville, because I was listening to your YouTube videos as I walked through that city for hours every day. And I think that even though the world knows how amazing you are, I still think with all that fame, you're still underrated, because I think you're one of the top people when it comes to showing people how a change in mindset can change their entire reality. And I don't know what it is, but when you're talking, I'm always like, wow, 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 wow. And these are things I didn't understand 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so I can't wait to dive in, because I think your tools are so useful to anybody on the planet. Your story is also incredible. For a guy like you, so articulate and so accomplished, to know that you were told you would never be able to read, and you weren't even reading and doing anything to your teenage years, no formal education. We'll get into that. But I want to start with something that I think most people struggle to get their head around, and something that took me years to get my head around, John. And when I first started London Real, a guest said to me, you know what, Brian, when you hate somebody, there's a little bit of you in them, and that's why you're obsessed with them. And I thought, that's ridiculous. I'm nothing like them. And I meditated on it for years, and I still could never, ever come to the conclusion. But maybe deep down inside of me, part of me knew that something was right about that. And this is something you talk a lot about, whether you're in deep love or deep hate with people, that there's something there that's inside of you, and you can't kind of go to the next level and transform until you, I think, try to understand it. And right now, Dr. John, I see so much hate in the world. I see America divided. I see people getting shot. I see people getting angry. And I think to myself, man, maybe this is a great time for them to learn some of your techniques. And so for someone out there right now that hates someone or loves someone, and this could be a certain political figure maybe that you know very well, that you might have lived one time in his tower, but that's like a perfect example of an archetype where people have these strong emotions. How do you start to have the conversation with people and say, those extreme feelings are actually holding you back from your own transformation? How do you have that conversation with people?
Well, sometimes I don't try to offer a service until I establish a need. Because if somebody's not asking, imposing and projecting onto it, you're trying to do something to impact them, because they're reminding you of something you're trying to impact in yourself. Okay, right. So I don't find that very productive.
That's interesting. So when you're trying to fix someone, it's
project.
really your issue. Okay, you're projecting your stuff.
It was a New Testament presentation, Romans 2:1, that said, beware of judging others, for what you judge in others, you do the same thing. And I was fascinated by that about 41 years ago. So instead of waiting for somebody to push my button to discover that, I decided to go to the Oxford English Dictionary and to go through the entire dictionary and underline every potential trait that I could judge in somebody. Kind, cruel, nice, mean, etc. And then what I did is I wrote out to the side, I underlined the particular trait. I found 4,628 traits. Gordon Alpert, 35 or 36 years earlier, found 4,000 in that same text.
Okay.
But I found 4,628. And I underlined the word that described the trait. And then I went out to the side and abbreviated really small the names of who I believed were the most exemplary of that trait. So if I saw, resentful, or I saw vindictive, or aggressively screaming, or whatever the trait might be, I would write out, who do I know that represents that to the fullest degree? And I put their name. And then I would go inside my life and find out where and when I've displayed or demonstrated the same specific trait, action or inaction, until I could identify where I did it quantitatively and qualitatively 100% to the degree that I projected. When I did that, I went through 4,628 traits. It took a couple of years to do.
You had already read the dictionary cover to cover when you were younger.
Well, I didn't. That dictionary I had not read cover to cover, but by going through this, I did.
Okay, right.
As I went through it. But I found out that I had every trait.
Wow.
And this is going to be probably shocking for somebody. Our fulfillment level is to the degree that we embrace all those traits. The hero, the villain, the saint, the sinner, the positive, the negative, the kind, the cruel, etc. But what we do is we tend to disown. We're too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others inside us. And we're only too proud as a dissociation from the shame we have that we're judging ourselves for that trait, and they're reminding us that's why we want to avoid them, because they're reminding us of a part of us that we haven't loved in ourselves and incorporated. We've been disowning it. We've been deflecting it, dismembering it. And so that's a disowned part of ourself that these people are bringing into our awareness. And we're judging and avoiding these people or seeking people because we can be too humble to admit what we see in them. Right. And as a result of it, they're giving us an opportunity to include the part of us that we've disowned. And our fulfillment in life is to the degree that we own it all. Our unfulfillment are all the voids. That's why whenever we judge somebody above or below us, put them on pedestals or pits, we feel empty. But the second we embrace and reflect and look within and discover it, we thank them for revealing to us the parts we've been disowning. And when we have all of it and we embrace the hero and the villain, people may not like Donald, but he owns his hero and villain. He's got people supporting and challenging, and he doesn't respond and he doesn't react. He just keeps going. And so that is a strength, actually. But we go around and we are addicted to moral hypocrisies that we're trying to get rid of half of ourselves and try to be only one side. And this one-sidedness, the pursuit of one-sidedness is futile. It's an empty pursuit because you're not going to get rid of half of yourself. I ask people by the thousands, how many of you have been trying to get rid of a particular trait in your life, negativity, resentful, or whatever, and you still got it? And they all put their hands up and then they go, I never thought about that. I've been on this self-improvement journey to get rid of half of me and only be one-sided because of a moral hypocrisy that I've been indoctrinated from mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers, conventions, traditions, mores, or whatever the source is, religions, politics. And I'm now trying to be something that's not obtainable and trying to avoid that which is unavoidable, which is a source of human suffering and non-sustainable futility.
And so if I see this characteristic in myself that I consider bad, how do I come to terms with it without continuing to promote it? Because if I am vindictive, if I go and say, I'm naturally vindictive, I'm going to do more of that, I'm guessing that's not necessarily the greatest way forward. So how do you come to terms with it, but also maybe not go into it? Or do you go into it? You know what I mean?
I have all the traits. You support my values, I'm nice as a pussycat. You challenge my values, I can be mean as a tiger.
Right.
I can be very humble and I can be very arrogant. I've been both. If I look honestly and do a video recording of me with a drone looking over me for 24 hours a day for a 3-month period, I'll find them all. I'll find kind, cruel, nice, mean, etc. And even those labels are incomplete awarenesses. If somebody is nice to somebody and, quote, nice and generous, they could be making them dependent, obligated, less resourceful, less driven, and kind of feel like they've got to go and compensate, and they lose their drive some cases. So you keep them in juvenile dependency by making it generous and quote, kind. And on the other side, so that very kind and generous is actually robbing them and basically stingy of them being able to be on their own and be capable of standing on their own 2 feet. So the inside the kind is cruel. It's like the yin and the yang. Right. Inside the cruel is kind. It's a Taoist understanding. And sometimes you're tough on them and you're mean and stingy. No, I won't take care of that. You have to figure it out yourself. They become resourceful and they become more precociously independent. They become more empowered. So is that mean nice or nice mean? So the polarities of judgments are actually inseparable. Our amygdala, which is our survival subcortical area of our brain, assigns valency, which is positive negative assignment labels to perceptions or events. And then we store that in hippocampus as episodic memories that we label to be positive or negative, prey or predator. And then we go around and we assume that those are true, but they're actually incomplete awarenesses. They're subjective biases that are distortions with false positives and false negatives. So we basically have this assumption about these things that are positive or negative, but turns out that the very thing you think is a positive has downsides. Right. Anybody who's been out on a date with somebody then thinks, oh, this is amazing, I'm infatuated. Weeks later, they discover, ooh, it's not what I thought. Right. And the same thing over on the things you think are terrific. You get this new house, you think, oh, I'm so happy. And then 6 months to a year later, you go, friggin' house, it's costing me a fortune. It's taken up all my time. So you realize that there's an inseparability of these polarities. Heraclitus called it the unity of opposites, and Hegel called it the synthesis of the pairs of opposites. When we actually realize that there's neither, and that we had imposed on it a judgment because of the moral hypocrisies we've been indoctrinated, we've labeled it, we're holding ourselves back because anything that's polarized and valent occupies space and time in our mind and creates intrusive thoughts, and we have difficulty sleeping. Insomnia is a byproduct of the labels we project onto things that are incomplete as a reminder and a feedback to let us know we're judging and not loving our environment.
There's a lot of people out there that can't sleep right now. And they're thinking, there's no way, Dr. John, that the reason I can't sleep is because I've got unresolved issues in my amygdala. But you're saying
but that's what it is. Because what happens is the amygdala, when it sees prey, and it assigns positive without negative, and it now creates an impulse to seek and to consume, it has to create a false positive in order to accelerate the adrenaline to capture the prey. So when it does, it accelerates and dramatizes the emotion and subjectively biases the interpretation of the event or perception. And that causes an alertness in order to capture the prey and grab the prey so we don't starve. And the same thing with a predator. So if we see something, we'll see way more negatives than positives, and we'll have a false positive on the negatives and a false negative on the positives. We'll distort it. We'll get our adrenaline going so we can run and get away from the predator. So anything that supports our values or challenges our values represents prey and predator on our mind. And the more polarized it is, the more insomnic we become, because those intrusive thoughts are on alert so we don't starve and we don't get eaten. And so it's a basic survival. There's only two forms of stress that people face in their life: the perception of loss of that which they seek, and the perception of gain of that which they try to avoid. The perception of starvation and being eaten to the brain. Right. So anything that supports or challenges values back inside the brain, in this subcortical area of the brain, is registered as prey and predator. And so we literally have these responses, and insomnia is a survival response to make sure that we don't miss out on food and get eaten. So insomnia is basically a feedback to let us know that we're highly polarized in our judgment. We're in an absolute state instead of a relative state, and we're not seeing both sides simultaneously. We're seeing one side without the other side, to which we're blind. And therefore, we're trying to avoid a predator and seek a prey, and so we're under alert.
And so if you never try to resolve those things, if you never go back...
They stay in your consciousness until they're resolved.
And
they're stored.
Do they naturally get resolved in people's lives, or no?
If you have events in life that you make new associations with what you thought was terrible and you find the blessings out of it, or the other side, we find the downsides of what we're infatuated, we can neutralize that and strengthen our intuitive capacities to see the other side that we're ignoring, that we're unconscious of. But in most cases, they get dramatized. They get compound interest. Anxiety disorder is compound interest on the original charge. Things that remind you of that, promote it, right? Dramatize it, compound it. So you might say that anxiety is nothing but compound interest added to an event that you saw that was imbalanced, that was negative. And ecstatic fantasies that hook people into new relationships over and over again is a compounding on the positive side. Both of them are distractions. Both of them are philic and phobic. Both of them are insomniac, stimulating, and they are intrusive thoughts that run our mind. If you go into deep meditation, while you go into the meditation, you can sit there and just go into meditation. You'll hear all this noise in the brain. All that noise in the brain is the unconscious information that we're not paying attention to, trying to meet up with the conscious to make us fully conscious to see both sides simultaneously that's stored in the hippocampus.
Will meditation resolve some of that?
In some cases, meditation, if it's integrative and not escape, some people use meditation to escape an event and try to dissociate from it. And some people use meditation as an integrative force to actually integrate and look for the opposite and balance and integrate the brain. The medial prefrontal cortex, the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, is designed to integrate. It's designed to create an integration of pairs of opposites in the brain. The amygdala is designed to separate them, to make sure you get to avoid predator and seek prey. The executive center is designed to integrate them and bring them back to wholeness. Wilhelm Wundt, father of experimental psychology in 1897, showed very clearly that there's simultaneous contrast that activate the medial prefrontal cortex and sequential contrast. And sequential contrast, I see the positive, later I see the negative. I see the negative, later I see the positive. There's a time gap between it. And that creates an arrow of time with memory and imagination, causes entropy and aging.
How do you get out of a rat race? How do you create wealth not only for yourself, but also for the generations to come after?
I am absolutely amazed with the quality of companies that we're getting exposure to.
We go on to Zoom calls with the innovators and the folks who are building new applications in metaverse, blockchain, artificial intelligence, decentralized finance.
What's going on, everybody? Thumbs up if you can see me.
We are focusing on early stage investment.
And the quality of people that we're getting exposure to, whether it be Dan Tapiero with 1RT, Jason Ma from Open, Yatsu from Animoca.
It's been a phenomenal experience thus far. It has far exceeded my expectations.
We are focusing on cutting edge technologies.
I view it now as the best investment I've ever made. The upside I view is unlimited.
And as a retail investor, I would never get this exposure anywhere else outside of Investment Club.
See you in the investment club.
And so our entropy and our aging process is nothing more than the accumulation of these subconsciously stored judgments that are intrusive, that are causing, in a sense, phobias and philias in our minds. And the second we see both sides simultaneously, we liberate ourselves from it. The intrusive thoughts are gone. We have restful sleep. We're present, and the executive center comes online, mitigates the risks of the negative side, calms down the fantasy, and allows us to have an objective state of mind where we're empowered.
Right. And time can also do this sometimes. Like 20 years after the event, sometimes you'll look back and say, you know what, my ex-wife also did wonderful things for me. Thank you. So sometimes time can help.
Yes, there's a thing called a central limit theorem. See, nobody knows the consequences of any action. If you do an act, like you do your show, we have no way of knowing all the consequences globally of what that's going to do. But we do know that the probability increases as the ripple effect occurs to get to a perfect balance of supporters and challengers. It will regress to a mean between the pairs of opposites. And so we know that. So the longer time goes on, an event that you thought was terrible or terrific has the capacity, if you awaken your intuition, it can have the capacity to neutralize itself over time. But some people dramatize it and run the story. And as long as they run the story, they're decreasing the probability of having that story being neutralized. And they dramatize it, and then they become a victim of their history, not a master of their destiny.
Yeah, I did that with my parents' divorce when I was 7. And, it wasn't necessarily a traumatic event, but for some reason I latched onto it, and I told myself this same story for decades, John. And it wasn't until I got some perspective and went back and interviewed each one that I realized that was maybe not a great moment of my life, but there was a lot of positives. And there was a lot of positives for both of my parents. My mom became this amazing independent woman. They were both happier. We actually did great. My mom showed me the world. It was like, oh my God, but I blocked it out for so long.
Well, we create a fantasy about how it should be, ought to be, supposed to be, got to be, have to be, must, need to be. Yeah. And then we compare it to what it is. And no matter what goes on, there's always a pair of opposites in what is. And so if we compare it to a fantasy, which is all positive, we can't appreciate our life. And so we get depressed because we're comparing our current reality to a fantasy about how we think it should have been.
Yeah.
And that holds us back from appreciating the magnificence of our life.
I want to, let's talk right now, because I want to talk about 2 things I saw in your movie, which are perfect examples. Let's talk about it now. There's one point in the movie where you're talking to a woman who had been traumatized by a violent act. I think a ex-boyfriend or somebody had knocked down the door and beat her up or something.
Her brother,
right. And you were talking to her, trying to get her to find the positives of a massively traumatic experience. And I can see people in the movie theater bristling for the fact that you weren't celebrating her victimhood and trying to, find this bad man. And you were like, okay, but what positive came from that experience? And people's jaws were dropping. And can you talk about that and why people have that reaction? Because in this day's culture, it's like, no, there's the victim and then there's this, and that's clearly a bad thing that happened. What happened there, and what were you trying to do?
William James, the father of modern psychology in about 1890s, said that the greatest discovery of his generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their perceptions and attitudes of mind. So there's an event out there. It's true. How you see the event is totally up to you. The event is neutral until you come to the table with an expectation or perception. Let me give you an example. If I was to take your hand and put it on a table here, let's imagine a table here, and I put your hand on it, and I took a big sledgehammer, and I slammed your thumb. And you went, whoa, you probably imagine that being traumatic, and you'd probably be angry at me and disperse, because the associations you have and the expectation you have is that's trauma. But what if I prefaced it? I said, I'm going to give you $1 billion in cash, tax-free US dollars in cash. I'm going to give you the mansion of your dreams on the location of your dreams, tax-free. It's yours. The male or female of your dreams, now being introduced to you, you find the person you've always wanted. And I stack up enough benefits to that. And I said, all I have to do is slam the thumb. Your thumb will be probably injured for about 10 days, and 2 weeks you'll be normal again. But I put enough of those on there. I asked, how many would allow me to slam the thumb? Every hand goes up.
Sign me up.
So now the expectation, the perception is completely different, because you have new associations associated with the same event, slamming a thumb. So is the slamming a thumb trauma? If you say so. If it's associated with more advantages and disadvantages, it's not. Somebody can actually be a radical fundamentalist in religion or whatever and die for their cause, and they will take it on because they've been told that in the afterlife you're going to get 72 virgins or something. You're going to stack up enough benefits, they'll go and do something because of the associations, expectations, and how you perceive it. Yeah. So an event is neutral until we bring to the table our expectations, our perceptions, our indoctrination of moral hypocrisies about how life's supposed to be. And we, as a result of it, then label it that way. So I've been blessed to take people who've been traumatized. I had a guy had his buddy crawl over a mine in front of him, and he saw the mine, and he tried to warn the guy. It's too late, and it blew up and had most of his buddy all over his body. Wow. And we went through and took each frame of that experience and found what happens when the mind dissociates from a trauma, dissociates and creates an anti-memory, an anti-perception. And if I can show them the anti-perceptions in each frame of that experience and put those two together, the so-called trauma and ecstasy, or torture and ecstasy, come together. And I like to think of love as the synthesis of all pairs of opposites. And I can show them, then all of a sudden they're in tears of gratitude for the event. And it's hard to comprehend to somebody that's just hearing it. But when you actually see it and talk to the person, you go, whoa, this is amazing.
How do they get to gratitude in that event when their buddy's blown up?
Because what they realize their mind dissociates. When somebody's in a near-death experience, or they're traumatized, they called it, or whatever, their mind will create an anti-experience in order to balance it, to keep the excitation and inhibition ratios in the brain balanced. The brain has to have a homeostatic state, so it'll create the opposite. And our intuition is trying to help us see it, but our impulses and instincts of our amygdala override it with drama, and we run the story, and then we stop ourselves from being able to see the other side. But if I go in there and I get them really present in the moment of the perception of that, and take them frame by frame, and let them now, and I ask them exactly what the anti-content is. If they're darkness, where's light? I'll give a real case. It's an interesting case. So this happened quite a bit years ago. A lady comes to me, and she was 4 years old. Her father staked her to the ground with tent stakes, arms and legs staked. There was a pet pig that she had won from some sort of contest, that grew up and was destroying the house and destroying the yard, and the father finally just lost it. He came home and it was just a mess. So he lost it, went out of control, tied her down the ground, and he stabbed the pig on a tarpaulin, wrapped it up in the thing, and took it away. Killed the pig. He just said, I can't have this pig anymore, and he just lost it emotionally. So I think we've all had moments where we just right to that edge. So the lady was, quote, traumatized. That's what she did. Now, this was 4. She was now 35 years later. So she's 39 when I met her. And she'd been running that story with her therapist and her specialist for 35 friggin' years.
We'll talk about therapists later.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go there.
Okay.
But anyway, so she dissociated at that moment. And I said, now go to that moment when you're in the backyard, it's dusk, you're being staked to the ground by your father, and you're hearing a squealing pig as it's getting stabbed. As you're being constrained, I said, go into that moment of constraint. Close your eyes. Get present. Because at the moment of perception, that's when the memory and the anti-memory separate and are judged by the amygdala. The second we go and perceive it and label it negative, terrible, our mind will dissociate and create this opposite. It's like a freeze response. So I asked her, go in that moment, what are you perceiving? I'm perceiving a bit cool and dark. But her mind dissociated from that, and she saw herself going through a field in a warm, sunny place in her mind. I said, great. At that moment, when you're in that state, you feel constrained. In that moment, I'm running through a field, there are butterflies and birds, and I'm free, just running freely through this field. The brain creates the anti-memory. Neuron Magazine, March 17, 2016, has a great article on the anti-memory and the EI ratios. So at that moment, we then realized, then all of a sudden the father stabs the pig. And at that moment, she dissociated. And when she did, she thought, I'm powerless to stop my father. So she imagined power coming there. And she saw a white light that she, from her indoctrination, from her childhood, believed to be God. So she imagined a white light like the sun. As a stabbing occurred, a white dove symbolizing peace from her instruction from church. Anything we've been taught in our life that's stored with a valency in our psyche can be pulled up and brought in to create the anti-memory, the content that's counterbalancing what she's experiencing. At that exact moment when she's feeling that I have hopelessness, I feel powerless, comes God, hope and power. I'm now being death and stabbing, eternal life, a symbol of a little angel dove, symbolic from a Christian bringing up. We went through there, and there were 4 stabbings, 4 doves went around the white light. This father wouldn't listen to her, and she was yelling, he would not listen. This godlike figure and these angels were listening to her and guiding her and saying everything's fine, everything's okay. So at that exact moment when she was doing this, the anti-memory was there. And when I showed her this and made her aware of both of them, they come together and they synthesize and they get a gamma synchronicity in the brain. This one creates a sympathetic response. This one creates a parasympathetic response. They come together with autonomic regulation and they get this synthesis and synchronicity. And a gamma synchronicity in the brain occurs, and there's an aha moment, and there's all of a sudden a hidden order from the apparent chaos, because chaos is basically missing information. You're missing the positives here, you're missing the negatives there. But together, if you see them simultaneous, as Wilhelm once says, synchronous simultaneity of contrast brings love. Love is the synthesis and synchronicity of all complementary opposites, no matter what it is. The unity of opposites, Heraclitus described. In that moment, when she got that, she broke out in tears. And she realized that she is a medical intuitive using her psychic, quote, abilities, which is actually dissociative psychosis, but her psychic abilities to access these angels to guide her and people's lives. I said, so these have been with you since you were a child. Yes, they've been my gods, and they started me on my spiritual quest, my personal development quest, my intuitive quest, my psychic abilities, etc. Did you thank your father? And she just stalled and just shocked for a second, and then she starts bawling. Because I never saw that the very career that I have, the very service that I have, the thing that I'm known for, the thing I've written a book about, my intuitive capacities stem from that so-called post-traumatic stress disorder. When she did, that frame of that whole event had no trauma. There's no trauma left. There's no ecstasy, no trauma. And then I said, now, Now that you realize that they're pairs of opposites and you integrated them and you got a gamma synchronicity in the brain and there's no polarity sitting there, now try to access, because right now you're not angry with your father and you needed to be angry about this torture in order to access this opposite state. This one's gone, this one's gone. Now just go into there and try to relive this. She goes, I can't access it, it's not there. And I said, no, nor is this one. She said, well, am I going to lose my angel guides? I said, these angel guides were never angel guides, they're you. They're projections of your own thing. At the Bardo Thadal, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it says at the moment you're passing, you're presented with both peaceful and wrathful deities, but fear not, for they are nothing but projections of your own mind. So these were projections. This was a trauma that was assumed it was a negative without a positive. That causes excitation, inhibition in the brain. The anti comes in, the dissociated opposite anti-memory comes in to get the IE ratios back into balance, to stabilize the brain. And when you put those two together and be fully conscious of it, not half conscious and half conscious, but fully conscious, the whole thing is dissolved. There's no trauma, there's no ecstasy. You had separated the ecstasy from the trauma in that moment and ran the dramatic story and kept the drama going and have now an instinct. And anybody that reminds you of your father, anybody that reminds you of any aspects of that, you're now going to be an avoidance response. And yet at the same time, anybody that reminds you of this, you're going to be in a seeking response. So You've been on a path of seeking anybody that's in that world of esoteric.
And not taking her own credit for that.
Not realizing that that's not outside. Anytime you blame things on the outside, you give credit to things on the outside to keep those things balanced. And so she was giving credit out here and giving blame out here, and the whole thing was nothing but her own doing. So it's not what happens to you, it's your perceptions of it.
And by neutralizing that, what can she now do?
Well, her clientele changed from partly psychotic schizophrenics that were dissociated, excuse the expression, but she was working with people that were also like her.
Right.
To raising her fees, stabilizing her perception of her own life, now working with a client, being more reasonable with her understanding, more rational, and realizing this was her, that she had been dissociated the entire time.
So
35 years.
Evolution, transformation, becoming the person you really are, and being of service.
She's moving from her amygdala function,
right,
where she's a victim of history, to her executive function, where she's now a master of her destiny.
Right.
That's what happened. Her self-worth went up, because blaming does not raise your self-worth. And giving dissociation. See, anytime you give credit to something out there, you minimize yourself. Anytime you blame somebody, you exaggerate yourself, and those are not you. Those are all inauthentic imposter syndromes. The real you is always the center between the pairs of opposites. And that's the one that is the hero and the villain. You know, she's the hero with this one and the villain with this one in her perceptions. But when she integrated her own hero and villain and realized where she has done those things also, that was her. The whole time it was her.
Wow.
And we want to run our story and dramatize it, and we keep ourselves in a victim of history for days, months, years, decades. I know some people are 70 years into it because they keep dramatizing it.
And everyone watching us right now has one of these on some type of level, big or small, deep down inside you and in your past, and it's holding you back from...
Well, it's catalyzing too. I mean, we don't want to... Well, I'm going to go. We're going to go down the rabbit hole now.
Yeah, because I'm associating things with that as well too, right? So go ahead.
Everybody has a hierarchy of values, which we said, I think, on a previous show. Everybody has a hierarchy of values, a set of priorities they live their life by. The very highest priority, the very highest value, Aristotle called the telos, the end in mind, the final cause. This telos is the path of purpose for people. And each individual's purpose is the most efficient and effective pathway to fulfill the greatest amount of voids with the greatest amount of value. And the voids are all the disowned parts that we're too proud or too humble to admit that we project onto things. See, she was too humble to admit that that was her, the angels. She's too proud to admit that that was her, the Father. When she integrated that and became equanimous, and in equity between these outside sources, evoked potentials, as they call it in the brain, and integrated it, she had a spontaneous potential in the brain, which is an aha moment, which is a synchronicity, which is a sign and confirmation of authenticity. And in that state, she's empowered. And in that state, she's fulfilling the voids because she's no longer judging. See, it's the judgments. When you're infatuated with somebody and you're conscious of the positives and unconscious of the negatives, you're too humble to admit what you see in them inside you. So you're disowning a part. When you're resentful to somebody and you're too proud to admit it, and you're to admit that you have that behavior.
Peter Thiel took $500,000 and turned it into $1 billion using the exact same techniques we're using inside the investment club. He met a CEO, his name was Zuckerberg. He pitched him the deal and he said, okay, I'll give you $500,000. Mark went public and sold the shares to people like you. Well, what happened to Peter? Well, he exited and got a 2,300x return. The wealthy invest in early stage companies, folks. The public markets are for suckers. It's a rigged game. By the way, this happens in crypto as well. It's called pre-sale tokens. This is Solana. Does anybody know this chain? They sold pre-sale tokens for 4 cents. And you can see the date on there, April 5th, 2018. Look at Solana today, folks. That thing's up over 1,000x. The media and Wall Street and all these hype people get you to buy the top. Meanwhile, they put their clients in at the bottom and they use you for liquidity to make their clients rich. You can play this same game. You just have to have the financial education and the deal flow. That's it.
You're disowning a part. Anytime you disown a part, you have voids, emptiness. That's why anytime we judge, we feel empty. We don't feel fulfilled. But anytime we integrate them and own them and we feel love, and realize that there are teachers teaching us how to own the parts we've been disowning, we get to have a moment of fulfillment. And the gamma synchronicities is a confirmation of an autonomic regulation where we have the most resilience and adaptability in our state of consciousness, and we're free. We're not having insomnia, and we're not having all the emotional vicissitudes of the autonomics running epigenetics and creating symptoms in our body to try to wake us up. It's helping us love and helping us bring wellness, and the wellness quotient goes up.
Okay. Wow. Now, we quickly talked about therapists, but in the current world we're in, her trauma would, on social media, have been celebrated. The father would have been demonized, and her therapist would have showed how that was the reason nothing in her life was working.
Exactly.
And would have rehashed it every week for a couple $100 an hour for 20 years.
Yep. That's what she was going through. And, there's therapists who are very aware and who do extraordinary work and help transform people's lives. And there are therapists that are wounded, that are stuck, and they're surrounding themselves with clients so they can justify their angers and their own stuckness. And there's a whole gradation of therapy, from those that are victims of their history to those that are masters of destiny. I've met some therapists that are brilliant. I've met others that are just wounded individuals, and they're reactive, and they're projecting their judgments onto their clients and waiting for those clients to come in so they can dramatize their own stuff and the client stuff. But there's stages of awareness. If you have, in first grade, you're told that an atom is a little ball. It's not the truth, but you're told that, and you had to be told that illusion till you're ready for the next thing, that it's a little bit of a Bohr model. It's a little solar system. And you have to be told that illusion until you're ready for the next one when you go to college. And you find out it's quantum numbers, it's probability distributions made out of complex mathematical square roots of -1. And then we realize, well, that's not it too, because those are infinitesimal non-spacious electrons. And so we don't really know, it's a mystery. And so we have to teach them the illusion till they're ready for truth. And that way, in almost every field in therapy, there's no different. You teach them the illusion until they're ready for truth. And when they're ready for truth, the next teacher appears, the next therapist takes them up the next level, and they get frustrated. I had a gentleman who came to my breakthrough experience, and he's been raging about his father and been going to his therapist for, I think, 14 years about his father. The woman is like a mother for him. So he's got a mother fixation and he's got a father resentment. He comes to breakthrough, and I just asked him a series of questions that made him I asked him things he never asked. The quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask. If you ask a question that makes you conscious of what you've been unconscious of, you can become fully conscious. And so I navigate people and help people balance the perceptions of their reality so they actually see what's actually there, not what they just created in their own mind.
How do you find the problem with a guy like that? Because you don't know that history when he walks in.
Well, he gives some of that history.
Some of it.
My father was abusive, and he tells me everything his therapist has told him.
Right, okay.
He runs the story.
Right.
And so I helped him break through this thing. And he ran out of the program 3 times. And I went out and chatted with him, and he came back in and he says, "You're like my father, and so you're now doing the very thing," which is exactly what I was needing to do to get him to bring it all up. So we got to it, and we broke it through.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.